This episode may contain some sensitive topics that some listeners may find challenging. If you are affected by anything that is spoken about, please speak to a trusted adult.
Hello everyone, this is the Wellbeing Club, a podcast made by young people, giving them a voice, helping them be confident in expressing themselves and breaking down barriers. My name is Noah.
My name is Ali.
My name is Ella.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about LGBTQ+. We chose this theme because it's important to discuss, especially going into Pride Month. We value inclusion and belonging, so breaking down barriers and opening conversations is one of the things we're very avid about.
Breakout Youth completed an analysis of the Be Well 2023 LGBTQ+ results. This showed 24% gender diverse people identify themselves as feeling always or very often lonely. This is why we've invited Krystle from Downtown.
Hi.
Good morning. Krystle, please, can you share with us today why you chose to join the Wellbeing Club?
Oh, I think LGBT wellbeing is something I'm really passionate about in my personal life and in my professional life. So I'm a queer person myself. I have queer family members. I've worked in roles where I've supported LGBT young people and their families, whether that's one-to-one or running support groups, things like that. And I'm currently the youth lead at Downtown Pompey. So Downtown Pompey's a wonderfully vibrant community arts organisation based in Portsmouth. Our work often explores themes of identity, memory, inclusivity. Being a queer-led CIC, we provide platforms for underrepresented voices in the city. So obviously that includes queer people. We've got several branches, ways of achieving that. So we do it through theatre, heritage, community work, and my focus, which is youth projects. I lead my team of creative facilitators in delivering a project called Queer Utopia. So Queer Utopia is an imaginative... Well, you look like you've got a question.
No, it's just, I'm in my school's LGBT+ community group and we're doing that project.
Fabulous. I thought I recognised your face.
Yeah.
Actually, yes. So, it's a fab, I hope you'd agree, it's a fab project.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's great to have a voice in the room that's actually experiencing the other side of that. So yeah, we've got different skilled facilitators delivering the projects. So basically, it's an imaginative world-building project where we explore a utopian vision for LGBT young people, and we're doing this over a 3-year period. So think of your favourite gaming worlds, the fantasy theme genre, things like D&D. We currently work with 2 schools in the city and 2 queer youth groups. We're consistently engaging with over 50 young people, making elements and significant items from their utopian worlds. Each session focuses on building a new layer to that world. From nature to creatures to how political decisions are made, what healthcare might look like, how we receive an education, could be special traditions and celebrations. We actually have some incredible conversations about some really complex issues, and I'm always really impressed by the young people's reoccurring themes of focusing on kindness and choice and respect for difference. So Ella, I wonder if you could give me a little bit of feedback on how you found Queer Utopia?
Yeah, sure. I really enjoyed it. It was a really nice experience. My school's only done 1 session so far, but I really enjoyed working with my friends on collages and stuff and being able to help make pieces of art with them that created the idea of Queer Utopia and showing a safe space for all queer. I really enjoyed that. I really came feeling like I had the sense of belonging and confidence, because I just felt so included and I just felt more connected to the wider part of the queer community.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I know in that first session, we're kind of just introducing the idea of a utopia. So for anyone that doesn't know what a utopia is, it's kind of that idea of a perfect world, isn't it? You know, one that's full of kindness and love, and where you're really respected, and things, your interests and things like that are really kind of held up and important in that space. So what we were doing in that session was doing a collage about your overall kind of view of what utopia was. So I'm really glad to hear that you enjoyed that.
I'm quite interested in the sounding of a queer utopia, but I'm just curious, what does queer mean?
Yeah, so queer is kind of an umbrella term that's being used at the moment that kind of covers lots of different identities under the LGBT umbrella. Once upon a time, it was a derogatory term. So it was kind of a bit of a slur to be called queer. So I think the community now have really reclaimed the word queer and used it as a celebration. In my experience working with young people, a lot of them are identifying as queer. I identify as queer myself as well. It's a label we're quite proud of, and it lets people know that we sit under that umbrella, but it's given as much information about ourselves as we're comfortable with.
Thank you.
Thanks, Krystle. That was really good clarification. So now we're going to go into a Q&A session with Krystle. These questions were all created by young people for the members of the Wellbeing Club. So, in the Wellbeing Survey, it showed that young people who identify as LGBTQ+ have significantly lower mental well-being, such as life satisfaction. So, what do you think contributes to this?
Ooh, interesting. Okay, firstly, I'm quite interested to know what you young people think might contribute to that lower mental well-being.
Bullying, maybe?
What do you think, Ella?
I think it links to the way that loads of people act about it, like it's something to be ashamed of. Like there's so much still negative stigmatism around being queer.
Yeah. Have you got any thoughts, Noah?
No, not really. Sorry.
No. Okay, so I can jump in with kind of my views on that. So I think there are numerous factors that can impact an LGBT young person's life satisfaction. So I can discuss some that in my experience working with young people that I consider to be significant. Firstly, I think it's fair to say we live in a society that is cis and heteronormative. So that's to say we expect the default that people will be straight and that they'll align perfectly with whatever label was given on their birth certificate. In reality, we know this just isn't true, and it never has been. This puts a lot of pressure on LGBTQ and questioning youth from the get-go. For example, most trans young people will have spent about 1.5 to 2 years considering their gender before they open up to another person. So it can be a really confusing and lonely time when you feel so different to your peers. If you're not LGBTQ+, you won't be expected to experience this added challenge. You're not expected to announce to the world who you are or who you fancy. People just assume. There's no coming out process, no worrying about your family or friends' expectations or reactions, no potential to be bullied for who you are. So I think cis and heteronormativity is a big factor in well-being. I also think LGBTQ+ youth are feeling increasingly worried about their place in society, particularly trans and non-binary youth. So from healthcare to which toilets they can use, all aspects of their experience are being debated in the public forum, and their voices are rarely, if ever, included. They're essentially being spoken over and told repeatedly that they don't know who they are or they're not who they say they are. The public discourse is affecting how they're treated at home, at school, their safety in public, and access to gender-affirming care. That's a lot to deal with on top of the usual teenage challenges. And I think all these factors create the same underlying feeling of being othered and adding to the challenge of finding their place, their community, and their safe spaces.
thank you for stuff saying all that. It was really nice to hear an adult like talk about it instead of it just being quite you've trying to advocate for themselves and then not being listened to because they're so young.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that hearing an adult talking about it makes it more like, I don't know if it makes it more like relevant, but it makes it more heard. So like you said, a lot of like young people that struggle with LGBT, they aren't heard because they're young and they're told, oh, it's a phase, you'll grow out of it, you'll figure it out. It's just because you're a teenager. I think it's definitely very like eye-opening to hear someone else that's older talking about it.
Yeah, I'm really glad that hearing an adult say that feels affirming and feels like you've got, adults on your side. But it still makes me really sad that you feel that your voices aren't being heard because you're young people, you're young queer people. Your voices should be the most important within that space. So yeah, I will always do what I can to support and advocate for LGBTQ plus young people.
It makes me sad to hear that young people would rather hear it from an adult than, well, other young people. And that, well, just makes me think, how do you think we can create safer communities and schools for LGBTQ plus young people to feel more included and heard?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And the answer drives a lot of the work that I do. So firstly, I think it's really important to say that LGBTQ plus young people are some of the most resilient I've ever met. Our community's been finding ways to gather and support each other throughout history. But in terms of creating safer communities outside of those spaces, it might shock you when I say that I think safety for LGBTQ plus people is a very low bar to set. Safety is a basic need. I'd like to see society and schools create an environment where LGBTQ plus youth can thrive. Because I think only once they're thriving will the community feel safer. So how do we get there? It's a really big question. I think a positive step is early education about different families, different relationships with others and our bodies. There's been a lot of bad press about LGBTQ plus focused teaching within schools. However, it's the inclusion, equity and visibility that normalises different ways of life. It begins in a really understandable and age-appropriate conversations about kind of family dynamics. So we teach children that some families have a mum and a dad. Some have two mummies. Some have a dad and a stepmom. Some have only one parent at home. Some may have two dads. Essentially, families come in all different shapes and sizes. Some parents might birth their kids. Some are adopted or fostered or brought up by grandparents. So these are not hard concepts for young children to grasp, in my experience, and it really starts to build a foundation for compassion and empathy for difference. So I just wonder what your experiences were like being introduced for the first time to kind of LGBT people and identities.
When I first got to senior school was when I first really saw any of it. So I was in my classroom when I was in year 7. We had a whole talk from a youth lead about LGBTQ, and I'd been exposed to it on social media before, but I didn't really know much about it, considering it was one of the first times I'd ever heard about it. So I definitely felt like I was very interested in it, and I really wanted to learn more to see how I could change what I was doing, or if I needed to change anything I was doing to be more inclusive. And then it kind of triggered me to start thinking about, again, myself, and then talking to my friends about it and making sure that all of my friends felt that they could come to me. If anything, they wanted to talk about anything, they could come to me and talk to me. So it definitely came in quite late in my schooling, but I think I've kind of seen it underlined in when we've spoken about families when I was in my primary school.
Yeah. And obviously you're a really compassionate person and your first thought was, how can I include people? But if those conversations start at secondary school, we're kind of 11, 12, the first time we're hearing about LGBT people, we've missed a real opportunity to already be building those conversations, that compassion, that understanding. So I think once we get to the secondary school level, LGBTQ plus inclusion should be embedded throughout the entire school curriculum and the school ethos. So rather than being confined to kind of PSHE lessons, so of course these lessons are really, really valuable, but they can often come across as tokenistic or really surface level when they're the only space that LGBTQ plus identities are acknowledged. True inclusion requires that LGBTQ plus topics, people and perspectives are visible and normalised across all subjects and all aspects of school. I can see you nodding furiously. Ella. How do you feel about that?
I just was thinking what you said about how it's only PSHE and stuff. And I really, 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 really wish that in my history lessons, I learned more about queer history. Because being a young queer person, when I first started questioning, I had to do the research myself. I got loads of books out from the library to learn about queer history. And I tried to learn about like what happened in the past and like how like queer people have overcome so much. I just really wish in the school curriculum, in my history lessons, I got to learn about like how queer people have overcome these horrible things that happened to them. I just wish it was like a nice thing in like school.
Absolutely. So yeah, it can be run through all of the curriculum. So for example, in English, we could study texts by LGBTQ plus authors or with queer characters and really dig into themes of identity and love and social justice. Or like you say, in history, there's so many incredible people that have done incredible things and really helped with the civil rights movements and in implementing change throughout history. I think it's really encouraging to hear that you went and did some of your own research on LGBT movements and their history. So what kind of things did you find?
So I read a bit about the riots and a bit about I think might be New York ballroom scene. That was really interesting. And a little bit about how queer people were prosecuted in the Holocaust. And some things about Alan Joy.
Yeah. So some really interesting characters there. Anyone else find out anything quite interesting?
I heard that a while ago, there was a pride parade in Turkey, and the police tried blasting it with water cannons. And funnily enough, ironically, it managed to create a massive rainbow of water led to the sunlight, which they probably did the opposite of what the police were trying to do. So there's no stopping it.
Definitely not. Yeah, I think kind of globally, like looking at places like Turkey and Russia, we're seeing a real rollback in rights, LGBTQ plus rights, which is quite worrying. So I think it's really important to hear these stories of how the movement has worked in the past and kind of take some inspiration from that.
One of my favourite authors was Ukrainian, but is very well known for being Russian. And he was a novelist and he wrote plays. And I'm pretty sure he was gay. And I think that led to his eventual death. From what I've researched into him, this is Nikolai Gogol. So from what I researched, he was writing the second part of one of his books, and the manuscript, I think he burnt it after it was reviewed, and then he locked himself in his room for several days until he eventually starved to death because of the backlash from being homosexual.
Yeah, there's some really worrying things coming out of, stories coming out of Russia. And I know I watched a documentary on kind of the underground pride that was celebrated in Russia, and it was so sedate and quiet compared to what we'd experience in this country. Like this year, Portsmouth are hosting UK Pride, and it's going to be a huge protest, firstly and foremost, but it's going to be a big celebration as well, really loud, really vibrant, really visible. But to see the difference of kind of how Pride happened in Russia, and it was not advertised, it was all spread by word of mouth, it was and they could have been raided by the police at any moment. So yeah, some really important history and really important things happening right now.
If it all has to be done by word, then it's obviously just not really well known. Why do you think people aren't big fans of it, or why maybe?
In Russia, so in Russia, there's like every other country, all over the world, there are always LGBTQ people. They will find ways of finding community and finding other queer people, but it's just not safe there. It's not safe to be out. It's not safe to hold pride parades. There is a threat of violence and arrest. So yeah, it's really, really sad. And like you were saying about some of the history, I think we had a little chat about kind of lavender marriages, and that's one of the ways that LGBTQ plus people could kind of protect themselves. Do you want to explain what a lavender marriage was?
Lavender marriage is when a gay man marries a lesbian, so they can protect themselves and stop people from discriminating against them, harassing them.
Yeah, and sometimes a gay man would also marry a really close straight female friend as well. And I think that kind of brings us back to Alan Turing as well. I think Turing had a kind of relationship that was similar to that, and despite the incredible work that he did on the Enigma device and really helping end a war, he was still treated terribly, put in an insane asylum, chemically castrated, and really this led to like depression and it's a really sad ending.
Wasn't he killed? Was he killed?
I don't think he was killed. I'm not 100% sure. Go on, Ella.
So Alan Turing was offered the option of going to jail, having to take medical drugs. He chose the option to take medical drugs to continue his research, but in the end they caused long-term depression and he ended up killing himself. It's really, really sad.
That's that people have to go to that just to be away from other people who don't like them for who they are.
Yeah. And I think there are a lot of really sad stories, but I think it's really important to focus on like queer joy as well. It's really how much of the community are protesting at the moment. It's connecting, it's focusing on what is, because there are so many things that are amazing about being LGBTQ plus as well. Like I say, they're some of the most resilient young people, incredibly creative. If family is not accepting, they develop and create chosen family. So there's lots of successes to celebrate there as well. And I think it's really important to spend some time focusing on that so that you've got the energy to continue the fight. So do you know what a chosen family is? Have any of you heard of chosen family?
Explain it just in case anyone who's listening hasn't heard it.
Yeah, so I think our birth family, our family of origin, are not always supportive. I think going back to kind of the ballroom scene, the New York ballroom scene again, that's a brilliant example of chosen family. So these people kind of gathered together, they found community around dancing, around voguing. They were very often Black, trans or non-binary, gender non-confirming young people. And yeah, they created houses, and the houses would take care of each other. They'd live together, they'd be family. So that's how they got around that. So that's what chosen family is.
So leading on, talking about more positive things instead of what should be done and what hasn't been done. We've obviously got Pride Festival being hosted here in Portsmouth on the 7th of June, I believe.
Yes, it's on the 7th.
So what can we do and what has been done for us to be good allies and have support?
Oh, I think allyship's super important, because that's how we create safer communities, right? So as queer people, we can do as much as we can do to create safe spaces, but outside of that, we need straight cis people to be doing some of the work as well. So I'd say definitely educating themselves. So very often they'll ask a lot of questions. Sometimes your friend may be absolutely fine with that, but sometimes it can be quite draining to have to answer questions over and over again. And we've got this thing called Google, and it gives us lots of answers to some of the questions. So your friend may be super happy to talk, like I say, or, you know, do a bit of research, do a bit of reading, watch some queer TV. You know, representation's really important, you know, to queer people. But as an ally, you could also watch them shows, read those books. I think things like using pronouns, introduce yourself with your pronouns. I'm Krystle, my pronouns are she, her. Hi, who are you? You know, it opens up, creates a space where it's safe for that queer person to tell you what their pronouns are. What else can we do? Using chosen names, you know, respecting the ways that people want to present themselves. There's so much that can be done. Doing some of the work in your school, you know, standing up and using your voice to help other, you know, your friends. I mean, what do you see is working really well in schools?
I see that, like, within friend groups, you can get a lot of support. Like, I personally am quite like a rock for some of my friends. I've definitely tried my hardest to support all of them, also being in the queer community myself. So when one of my friends came out, she came to me first and was like, hey, I think I'm a lesbian. What, like, will you help me talk to my family? Will you help me tell the others? And I helped her out. And I think it's really good that my friends can see me as one of the people that they can come to if they can't go to an adult.
Yeah, I think kind of validating feelings, validating identities, validating that it's really tricky to figure out who you are sometimes. But, you know, especially as a teenager, you've got so much going on already, to be worried about your identity and trying to figure that out as well. So, you know, you want and deserve all the support you can possibly get in that regard. It's part of what my role used to be when I worked at Portsmouth City Council, was supporting young people and kind of going into schools and helping them to kind of put policies in place, train staff. So it was a safe space where these conversations can be had. So is there anything you've seen really working in schools, Ella?
The one thing, like in my school, is there's a specific section, library for queer books, and I just thought that was really nice. Specifically because I've read pretty much every single book on the shelf. But it's just nice to see that have like a special place in our place of learning.
Yeah. So what happens when you're reading about LGBTQ plus characters or reading from LGBTQ authors? What sort of feeling does that give you?
I always feel like I belong. It's like nice to see a character that is like you, that is going through the same struggles as you, that you can relate to on a different level, because like it's like saying to someone, go over it too, but in the form of a book. It's like nice to see queer authors because it shows that like people can be successful and make these beautiful pieces of art through words to like inspire us, to help us to continue, grow stronger and be more positive, like fight for our rights in our times of darkness.
Yeah. I think that kind of makes me think about the Queer Utopias project and kind of the fact that we always use LGBTQ plus facilitators within the project, because I think it's really, really important for young people to see, and, you know, this term scares some of us, but us queer elders, you know, it's really important that you get to see that actually you get through your teenage years, you can succeed, you can get through those times that feel really hard. And yeah, we can stand proud in front of you and say, yes, we were there. And these are the sort of things that we'd absolutely love to have been part of. So yeah, hopefully that makes a difference, just being able to see queer elders there and bring the community together. What about you, Noah? What sort of things are happening in your school? What works? What?
So I don't actually go to school. I'm homeschooled, and I think I'm quite a few of my friends, and some of my friends are LGBTQ plus, and they are also homeschooled. One of my friends is very into it. She's the one who actually told me most things that I now know about it. But I feel like sometimes you get a bit more freedom to be who you are when you're homeschooled, personally, but then again, you may not have all the protection from other people when you don't have as many people around you, and you don't have the as much social ability. I mean, you might have a lot of social ability, but you may not get as much as you might get in school. And yeah, but still, it's nice to be.
Yeah, I suppose as long as those conversations are happening and you're learning about different people and getting that enrichment, it doesn't matter where it's happening, whether you're being homeschooled or whether it's happening within a brick school.
I think linking back to what we said about books and especially TV shows, seeing that representation is again really it makes you feel like you belong, like Ella said, because if you haven't been exposed to it as much, but you're questioning, and then you watch a TV show or you read a book and hey, they're going through the same thing as me, it's definitely really eye-opening to see that it isn't just you. I think especially with a lot of the TV shows that I've seen have quite a diverse range of different kinds of people. I think it's really good that there is that diversity out there and that everyone in some way is represented, because then it makes it feel more normalized. So it's not just something that's a bit it's a taboo, you don't really talk about it. It's, if it's on TV and it's in media, then it's accepted.
Yeah, representation is so important. To have visibly queer characters makes such a difference, because there's a real feeling of loneliness otherwise. So you're the only person experiencing what's happening, you know. And I think we're just wired to want to find community. We're wired to want to share our experience and kind of know that we're not alone. So it's super important. It's I think I feel particularly passionately because I identify as bisexual. So I found the Heartstoppers series really, really interesting, because it's Nick, isn't it? The main character. Nick started seeing another boy, and repeatedly, again and again, other characters would say, "Oh, so you're gay now?" And Nick's tagline almost became, "No, actually, I'm bi." You know, because it's so, bisexuality is erased sometimes. We stick to these binaries of kind of, you're either gay or you're straight. You know, what's that, sorry?
A bit stereotypical.
Yeah. So I actually, even as an adult, found it really interesting to look at Nick's character and kind of this constant struggle he had with, no, that's not who I am. This is who I am. So yeah, even, you know, me as an adult, I'm still finding that representation really, really exciting. Strictly Come Dancing, Doctor Who, all of these. Yes,
I love Doctor Who. Doctor Who is one of my TV shows that I go to, And some of the characters in that, like, spoilers if anyone hasn't seen it, in the series now with the current Doctor and Rogue. I love Rogue, but that's just because I love musical theatre and he's one of my favourite theatre actors. But the storyline between him and Rogue was so lovely to see, especially considering I liked the Torchwood spin-off of Doctor Who, and the storyline between Jack and Yanto in that was one of my favourite things I've ever watched. But seeing that again, but in actual Doctor Who, was brilliant. I thought it was really nice to see.
Yeah, I've definitely had a couple of moments of tearing up watching Doctor Who. It feels very special for the community. I mean, there was some queer representation and LGBTQ plus characters when I was younger, but they were often in shows that were probably not age appropriate for me at the time. Things like Queer as Folk and Bad Girls and, you know, things like that. So they were a bit more adult themed, but it's so nice just to see that family television now is making sure that there's inclusion of all people.
Linking back to what you said about being bisexual, I kind of also agree with how being pansexual, because like currently, because I like someone who's male, everyone's like, oh, so you're straight. And, well, no, because I don't have a preference. It's just whoever I like. And I don't care that I like him because he's a boy. I care because I like him because he's a nice person and I like his personality, which is where it comes from. I don't see gender when I consider, like, if I like someone or my feelings, I see who they are as a person without that. So I think it's definitely, like, it does get erased, but it is still there quite firmly that there is bisexual and pansexual, and there's not just these two extremes.
Yeah. I think there's too much binary thinking a lot of the time and kind of trying to fit ourselves into one box or another, and not so much looking at things as spectrums, you know, and that goes for gender as well. I mean, personally, I'm married to a man, but it doesn't take away any of my bisexuality. And it took me a long time to I did actually have some issues getting accepted into the community, you know, as someone who does work for the queer community, because I was looking like I was in this straight relationship. So yeah, it's really tricky. And bisexuals and pansexuals make up the biggest subgroup within LGBTQ plus people. So it's really interesting that we have some quite unique struggles. But I think it makes us really passionate about standing by trans and non-binary people as well, because they're also dealing with that kind of binary thinking when we're dealing with spectrums. You know, humans don't fit neatly into little boxes.
Thank you, Krystle. That was really interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
Just going to ask the last question. According to the BUL survey, nearly 5 in 10 young people who are trans and gender diverse are just over 7 in 10 gay and lesbian have experienced gender discrimination. What do you think are some key signs a young person may be experiencing this, and how can you support them?
Yeah, I think gender discrimination feels like a really prominent issue right now. I think everyone's harmed by it to some degree by gender discrimination. However, as your survey showed, it can have a significant effect on the well-being of trans, non-binary people, lesbian, gay and bisexual youth, who often sit outside of gendered expectations. Some of the signs that young people might be experiencing this could be changes in your friend's mood or their behaviour. If they're being bullied in some way, they're likely to feel quite sad or scared, anxious, angry. So they might appear more reluctant to be in environments where they're experiencing the bullying. They might seem withdrawn or not want to be as social as usual. You might notice that your friend's not as interested or focused on schoolwork and, you know, their common interests. In terms of support, I think it should be proactive and not just reactive. For example, schools should have in place policies for preventing and responding to this before it happens, and it should be really clearly communicated to everyone in the school community. Education is also, again, really important. So things like tackling gender stereotypes and expectations, whether that's how you look, the abilities you have, the emotions that you feel, the careers or options available to you. None of this should be determined by our gender. So it helps everyone when we unpack this, especially LGBT youth. Being able to use pronouns that you align with, the name you feel most comfortable with, and the facilities you feel safe in should be standard. But sadly, this is becoming increasingly hard for trans and non-binary youth. So I think safe spaces and swift responses are vital.
Thank you for that, Krystle. So is there any signposting for any young people that might be seeking support after listening to this episode?
Oh, okay. So firstly, the Queer Utopias project is generally closed. It's not open to the public. We only work with queer groups, LGBTQ plus groups within schools and youth groups. So if you've got a youth group in your school, get your school to reach out to Downtown because we'd love to work with you. Apart from that, Portsmouth City Council have an incredible LGBTQ plus youth service. I used to work there myself. It's a very good service. They run 2 youth groups, catering for young people under 25 and under 18s as well. So they're weekly youth groups. So they're fantastic, and they have support workers within the space, so they can really do some fantastic signposting and help you get extra mental health support and things like that if you need it. They're closed groups as well, so you have to email ahead, and you can email LGBT young people at portsmouthcc.gov.uk, and they'll take very good care of you there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me in today. It's been really enjoyable.
Thank you for coming.
Very educational. Very cool.
It's brilliant. Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you to Unlock for letting us use their podcast room today.
We would like to say thank you for Be Well for providing the data and support for this episode.
We would like to thank Victory Park Morrison's for refreshments during this episode, especially the custard grapes.
Thank you to the Council of Social Responsibility for sponsoring and arranging this session.
If you've been affected by anything mentioned in this episode today, you can find more information on LGBTQ on the websites yservices.co.uk and genderedintelligence.co.uk.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Wellbeing Club today, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye. If you are a business or an organisation who would like to get involved by sponsoring an episode, please contact Lydia via www.csrnet.org.uk.